In 1564, in the city of Rome, one of the greatest artists in human history took his final breath. He was 88 years old. His name was Michelangelo di Lodovico Buonarroti Simoni, but history remembers him simply as Michelangelo. During his lifetime, people called him Il Divino, the Divine One. And when you look at his work, it's not hard to understand why. Michelangelo might never have become the legend we know today. His father, Lodovico di Leonardo Buonarroti Simoni, came from a respected family of bankers. He had very practical plans for his son. Young Michelangelo was sent to school in Florence with the intention of pursuing a business career. But there was one problem. Michelangelo had absolutely no interest in business. Instead of studying, he spent his time secretly observing painters and sculptors at work. He copied drawings. He studied statues. He watched how light and shadow moved across marble. While other boys memorized lessons, Michelangelo dreamed in stone. There's a story Michelangelo later told about his childhood. His mother was in poor health after his birth and died when he was only 6 years old. As an infant, he was sent to live with a wet nurse whose husband was a stonecutter living beside a quarry. Years later, Michelangelo joked, "I took the hammer and chisels with which I carved my figures from my wet nurse milk." Whether literal or symbolic, the image is powerful. From the very beginning, his life was shaped by stone. And despite his father's wishes, his artistic talent became impossible to ignore. At just 13 years old, Michelangelo was apprenticed to a prominent artist in Florence. His journey had officially begun. By the time he was 30, Michelangelo had already created two of the most famous sculptures in history. The first was the breathtaking Pieta, a delicate yet powerful depiction of the Virgin Mary holding the body of Christ. The marble seems soft, almost alive. It's hard to believe it was carved from cold stone. Then came David, towering, confident, and full of tension. Not the victorious hero after battle, but the young man just before facing Goliath. Muscles coiled. Eyes focused. Courage captured in marble. These weren't just sculptures. They redefined what sculpture could be. But Michelangelo wasn't only a sculptor. He was also a painter, though he famously considered himself a sculptor first. When Pope Julius II ordered him to paint the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel, Michelangelo initially resisted. He had little experience with large-scale fresco painting. But what he created between 1508 and 1512 would change art forever. The ceiling of the Sistine Chapel, especially the creation of Adam, is now one of the most admired and recognized works in history. Those nearly touching fingers have become one of the most iconic images ever painted. Standing beneath that ceiling, people from every culture and century have felt the same thing, awe. And as if sculpture and painting were not enough, Michelangelo also transformed architecture. At age 72, when most would have long retired, he took on the enormous responsibility of overseeing the completion of St. Peter's Basilica. The magnificent dome that defines the Roman skyline? That was Michelangelo's vision. Even in old age, his genius did not fade. When Michelangelo died in 1564, the historian Benedetto Varchi delivered his funeral oration. He tried to describe the feeling of seeing Michelangelo's art. "I am not only full of admiration, not only amazed, not only astonished and startled and one reborn, but my pulse flutters, my blood runs cold, my mind reels, and my hair stands on end, so moved am I." 4 centuries later, those words still ring true. A portrait of Michelangelo, believed to have been painted when he was around 70, now hangs in the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York, attributed to Daniele de Volterra. The face is stern, tired, intense. A man who wrestled with stone, and won. Perhaps no quote captures Michelangelo's philosophy better than this. "The sculpture is already complete within the marble block, before I start my work. It is already there. I just have to chisel away the superfluous material." For Michelangelo, art wasn't about creating something from nothing. It was about revealing what was already hidden. And maybe that's why he remains unforgettable. Not just because he shaped marble, but because he shaped history. If you enjoyed this story of genius, passion and perseverance, don't forget to like, subscribe, and explore more stories from the lives of history's greatest creators.